2007, that was a very difficult year for me. It was the beginning of actually two of the most difficult years in my life. It was the year that my own divorce process began. I had two small children. They were 1.5 and 4.5. And like most parents, I was very concerned about the long-term effects that my divorce would have on them. I may have been a little more neurotic about this than most parents because my educational background was in counseling and psychology. So I was very familiar with risks like depression, addiction, poor performance in school, early sexual activity, truancy, basically everything that strikes fear into the hearts of parents. But I'd also been a step-parent, so I knew that this didn't always have to be the case. I learned two things from being a step-parent. One, that kids can be quite resilient, and with the right support, they can learn to process things like grief, disappointment, and sadness, and become stronger adults for it. I also learned that divorce is not a one-time event. You may think that a child has processed something, and then at different developmental stages or different important events in their life, they may revisit the pain, the reality that mom and dad can't be in the same place at the same time, or the reality that something's going on at home that reminds them of what isn't, can be revisited many times throughout childhood. So this led me to try and figure out what I could do to best support my children. I began training with the International Network for Children and Families. I did their parenting program and then learned how to train other parents. And I also trained in compassionate communication. This was a training program that not only for learning how to talk to your children and to other people using compassionate communication, but I also learned mediation skills for adults and for children. During this time, I was browsing through every divorce book I could also get my hands on, and though the books were helpful, they had tips like, ways to set up rituals for transition to help your kids transition from one home to another, do's and don'ts on things to say, things not to say. In reality, what I found was that there was no way that a book could prepare you for the amount of emotional devastation that a divorce puts adults under. As I went through my own process and I watched other people go through their process, I was just amazed at the amount of crushing stress that people are under. Once attorneys get involved, good intentions can go from bad to worse very quickly. Under this kind of stress, I watched people make nightmare dating choices, self-medication was very common, personal neglect, withdrawing from society. I even saw very intelligent, compassionate people badmouth their ex in front of their kids, just not really thinking about it. So I started thinking, what is it that parents really need? And what I realized is what they most need is emotional support. They can't be emotionally supportive to their kids if they don't have enough emotional support in their own life. And what parents really need is to learn emotional awareness, to recognize the difference between self-care and self-indulgence, and to lay all the negative self-talk and fears in their mind to rest. But what people most need is they need hope. Going through the divorce process can be like walking through this long, dark tunnel with all this fear and anxiety about everything that could be on the other side. And people need to have hope that if they just keep moving and walking towards the light, that they can have a happy life, that their kids will be happy and healthy, and that everything is going to be just fine. So this video is to help you learn the importance of emotional awareness. Whether you are repressive or reactive, whether you're a screamer or somebody that intellectualizes things, it's important to know what your emotional style is, what triggers you, and how that's affecting your life. This is going to help you navigate your divorce, and it's going to help you navigate the rest of your life more effectively. So what is emotional awareness? Well, basically, it's understanding that you have a fact or an event that happens. And then we have thoughts that kind of put judgments on that fact or ideas around that fact. We have feelings about those thoughts, which lead us into some kind of action, which lead us into an outcome. And all of this can either lead to conflict or to some kind of resolution, depending on how we process this. Recent studies have shown that it's not actually the divorce itself that causes most harm to kids. It is the ongoing conflict. In fact, the ongoing conflict was so important that studies showed that parents that were married, that stayed married, that had a high amount of conflict, that their kids were at just as high of risk as parents who went through a divorce and had a high amount of conflict. And the kids who came from divorced families where they were able to reconcile their differences and keep the conflict away from the children, that these kids were best able to manage their difficult emotions in the beginning and not have long-term harm affect them for the rest of their life. So I'd like to show you this chart that kind of help you understand. I've broken down divorce into like 3 different styles and 3 different approaches that way people seem to handle divorce, and help you understand where you might fit into there so that you can move to a way that's going to bring more health and happiness to your family.
Okay, so what we have here, I've outlined the 3 ways that people tend to approach divorce. They're not rock solid per se that somebody's in one category and that's where they'll be forever, but they show tendencies. People tend to favor one. It doesn't mean they can't move into the other. And actually, my reason for being with you and showing you this is to show you how you can move to the next stage. We'll start with reactive. And in this, you see, I start with the fact, the conflict. In this case, it's divorce. And then there's thoughts around that fact, fear-based thoughts, usually around security or worries about being alone for the rest of their life, worries about the children. They're created thoughts of what could possibly go wrong, all worst-case scenario. Then we have the feelings that arrive from those thoughts. And these are feelings that are very intense. I put rage and apathy, and rage is for the reactive, outwardly reactive type who tends to yell and storm and throw a tantrum, and apathy is the type that is more repressive. Their rage may look more like stuffing, like substance abuse or other forms of addictions. Also, the I don't care, it can be the very apathetic, narcissistic way of approaching things. You'll see that I have pause labeled, but there is no pause in the reactive personality. They move straight from their feelings into action, and the actions are usually revenge. They're revenge on the self, revenge on the other. Sometimes one or the other, usually it's both. And the revenge can, again, look like addictions or self-medicating or just making poor choices, overspending, different things that they do to themselves because they're angry with themselves or don't feel worthy. And then revenge on the other this is where you see the outward, I'm going to ruin their life. They'll never see the children again, or I'm going to, take him for everything he's worth, or, she'll never get a dime out of me. They're trying to make the other person miserable. And the outcome for this is suffering. It's suffering for the person who's having all these feelings. It's suffering for the person they're attacking. It's really heartbreaking and suffering for the children. So hopefully most people can see that and move to responsible. And responsible is what our legal system is based on. You have the same conflict. You're getting a divorce. The thoughts are fear-based, and they're still created thoughts and worried about the future, but they're looking at practicalities and what is, and they're stuck in everything that could go wrong still. And the feelings are usually more, rather than rage and apathy, they're more around blame and shame. What the other person did, what I did, and they're trying to figure out, who's at fault. But there is a pause here, and luckily there is a pause, and this creates an openness. And usually in that openness, they may be seeing a counselor or talking to friends. They figure out that they need to compromise so that they can get some kind of resolution that's going to help the situation. And the compromise, sometimes they do compromise themselves, or the other compromises, you figure out a way to make it work. This is where the legal system steps in. And, it works. Everybody survives, but it still has that win-lose feeling. Both partners may feel like they've lost, and the other one won. Both people survive. The kids usually get by as long as the adults continue to make responsible choices and stay open. The kids are okay. Then we have the third way, which is really a newer approach, and this is what I call the renewing approach. And here you have the same thing, conflict. The conflict is happening. This time the thoughts are different. The thoughts are around acceptance. You're not trying to change anything. You're just looking at reality at what it is. They say stress is what happens when your mind resists reality. And, you're looking at these and you're just accepting it. The feelings for the renewing personality, they're really around forgiveness. They're noticing, this person notices their shortcomings. They know the person's shortcomings that they're working with, how they got there, why. And, they're okay with, that's just how it happened. And there's forgiveness in that. And then the pause usually in this case it takes on a much deeper level. It's usually some kind of spiritual practice, whether it be meditation, prayer, or some kind of trust in the universe, God, whatever their belief system is, that creates a sense of trust and an allowing. There's a trust that everything happens for a reason, and they're allowing the future to unfold rather than trying to control every outcome. And in this, the actions look completely different. Rather than compromise on a conflict, their actions revolve around connection. And I put connection to self and to other because to have this renewing approach to divorce, it only takes one person. If the other person also has a renewing attitude, you can do the connection to the other, and that really generates a lot of positive energy for the kids. That's the ideal. But sometimes you have a partner who's stuck and reactive, and in this case, you're connecting to yourself, and you still have acceptance and forgiveness for the other partner, but you're just creating the space that you can within yourself to be connected and to connect with your children. And in this dynamic, the outcome is thrive. The person that's connected to themselves certainly thrives. If they can reach another person who's also in renewing mode, the connection to the other thrives. And in this case, the children win. Whether they be winning because they have one parent modeling health, children will always gravitate towards health, or they win because they have two parents that have accepted what hasn't worked and have moved into a paradigm of what does work. The outcome will be thriving for the children, for sure, and for that individual. What I want you to understand is that if you are in responsible, you can move to renewing. If you are in reactive, thinking of renewing may seem way too unrealistic to you. You might want to just move to responsible first and see how that feels for a while, and then kind of move forward. And if you're in renewing, keep doing whatever it is that you're doing that keeps you in that space of trust and allowing. And if you feel yourself falling out because of different life stressors, that's okay. Just notice it and keep that sense of awareness.
Okay, so now you've seen the 3 different styles of divorce, and you can understand how important it is to know where you're at so that you can affect the best possible outcome for you and your family. So if you feel like I can support you in this, which I know that I can help you create a strong parenting plan, get clear on your values for what's most important to you, and help reduce the cost of your attorney's fees, and get you emotionally solid and grounded so that you can go through this process as peacefully as possible. Come check out my website at www.jbpeacesolutions.com.